One Great Earth. My name is Dan. I hope you're well. Got a bit to get into today. Follow up on some news and just a quick glance. Great Earth. My name is Dan. My name is Dan. I hope you're well. That's an old headline. Let's start on this 50-kilometer wide iceberg. Here's where it's been. It's just getting pushed out further and further into the... I don't know how tall it is, how deep it goes, how deep this iceberg goes, but we've been saying this for months now that this iceberg is insane. We think that it was responsible for an earthquake that hit the islands when this thing must have hit the paper of the shore, paper of the land that forms. Don't know if it broke off in pieces, if a large bit thing. It is twirling, causing a lot of nervous glances whenever you tell them that it's 80 miles long, 80 miles wide. Just north of Antarctica, east of Drake's Passage, far south of the Falkland Islands. This little guy is a candidate for a world changer. You gotta think that this is a huge fresh body of water, frozen. It's going to get into places and melt. It's going to get near areas and melt. And it's going to cause ocean warming, among other factors that would play into how far this thing is going to get. We have it right here. Falkland Islands is right here. This is the path it took over some years, just recently becoming very quick, very large. Right here, this is where I believe that earthquake occurred. But it's one of the largest icebergs on the planet, if not the largest that I can see. Because there is a new iceberg that is broken up free. Right here. This is a new iceberg that just broke off here. Come out like a tooth. No. Whoa. And float away. Get carried away by the raging currents and massive air speeds that they get in these around these parts of the world. See some 70-kilometer gust of wind But when it's constant, the 70-mile gets in everywhere and pushes. And push these icebergs very far, even though that, how long is this? 40, say 40 kilometers is A, B, C. We're solving for A. Not solving for A. We know A, 40 kilometers. So again, this is another massive iceberg that's just recently been coming undone. This is not normal. South and North poles heat up at least 10 times faster than the rest of the planet. So if everything's covered in ice still, but we're seeing a lot of movement, it means that the water is probably warming up, causing ice melt to happen in layers instead of just on top of the that we can see clearly. You can see there are icebergs all over the place. Some are very large. One of them can go through Drake's Patch. This is a 47-kilometer iceberg. Works here. I don't have the file I used to have their names, their identification names, but here, lack of fast ice is allowing the icebergs to roam freely because they're not being checked by anything around them, as in a belt of ice that's holding them down. Instead, is plowing through all this ice, hitting current, going up further north. I mean, how big of an iceberg needs to break off and occur before we start sounding some global alarms about freshwater flooding in the oceans, causing extreme seawater rise? This is what we're looking at. That's this future. This thing only has a future of melting, you understand? The dangers and risks that go with a huge frozen fresh body of water, fresh water, frozen fresh water body of ice. There, I got through it. The big part about this is corner up here, depending on the orientation of where this thing is spinning. This is looking, a lot of erosion has been happening here. As well as to crack this gap here, this chasm is getting wider. You can see its age, not its age, but its weathering. It's definitely broken pieces off. Definitely the shape of it looks different. Again, the only time like I've ever lost a file, I think, is this recent one where I had coordinates and names and important stuff related to these icebergs. Like this guy was broken free in the 80s and it's largely been innocuous until recently, where it's just powered up. It's had this huge journey north. Nothing's been able to stop it, because how can you stop it? Any kind of force that you exert on it, it's going to go through it. Massive. This could be one of a kind cruise if you're able to get near this thing. You have binoculars. That'd be pretty wild. Don't know how tall it is, how the height from the surface to the top of the iceberg is misleading because we don't know how deep this thing goes from the surface down. You don't know if it's just like a giant tooth or if it's flat from all the abrasions if it hit land underneath the water. Slopes up. There's a lot of questions regarding this giant iceberg. More importantly, how much further north is it going to get? It's spinning, it's rotating, it's definitely stuck in a current because you can see the current pushing it around. The current like pushes it, and it's the absence of space of north side of this iceberg. Doesn't have any ice that's constantly being flooded out. I don't want to use any hyperbolic words, but I am saying that this is a concern, an immediate concern that our generation is going to, not my generation, I'm sorry, this next generation is going to have to worry about, and that's giant pieces of floating ice. Like an iceberg that's going through Drake's Passage, and cruise lines go through that. You can't have a cruise liner smack one of these icebergs that just pop up, that just break apart and pop up. Pop up? Checking. Well, that's all good. We'll keep tabs on this iceberg that's hovering around the Arctic zone. That line right here. There's no telling what's going to happen with it. The thing that is certain is that it will start to melt and fail as a structure. Hurricane Beryl reaches record winds of 165 miles per hour as a powerful storm barrels towards Jamaica. There's been six lives lost so far. A lot of property, a lot of nature, tree damage, woods. You can see all the trees are just ripped apart. They're still standing, but you know the leaves are gone. And without the leaves absorbing heat, you're spreading heat out along a further larger amount of area. It became a Category 5 hurricane at some point. So, it being a Category 5, this is outdated already. Hurricane Beryl. Where is it going and what is a Category 5 storm? Okay, a Category 5 is the strongest hurricane on the Saffir-Simpson scale, bringing winds of 157 miles per hour, 252 kilometers per hour of higher, capable of causing catastrophic damage, including the destruction of homes and infrastructure. Since 1960, only 30 Atlantic hurricanes have reached Category 5. The year of Hurricane Katrina was at 4. The earliest Category 5 hurricane on record in the Atlantic. These are records that are being broken, that those of us that have been saying the oceans are going to fight back. The oceans are absorbing temperatures far beyond what they could sustain. And we don't know what that kind of cascading failure would cause. Might make it. We see these currents here. All very powerful stuff. But then you look it down here, where we were just looking at the Easter Drake's Passage right here. Currents are powerful, and if these giant icebergs get sucked up, and they'll just tear it apart, adding to ocean sea level rise. Still bleaching alerts throughout the Atlantic, throughout the Gulf of Mexico, and surprisingly, where the Northeast has been rather at cool water, is looking to be warming up. Not only that, but is looking to get bleaching. Whatever is causing the bleaching is being pulled around in the currents. That is causing the death of algae. Results in the bleaching of coral. Bleaching in coral reef is heat stroke in a human being. It's not easy to come back from. We don't know. Because reefs that are dead and gone don't come back. It takes a lot to restore a coral reef, something I know nothing about. But I monitor a lot of networks and news agencies that do a lot of that. It's pretty incredible work, but it's also a lot of nothing. Go for miles not seeing much of any sort of life. Are we too late to explore underneath the ocean? Is the wonder world that we thought it was underneath far less than what we would have expected? We're looking at extinctions in the billions when it comes to insects, when it comes to birds, when it comes to marine life. Hard to struggle. It's just a struggle having to put myself in these news, these articles, these stories, and feel them, to be able to tell them. And one thing that's sore subject of the phenomenon as known as crowd crushing. This is from northern India, where they are seeing record temperatures over 115 degrees. Take a look at this real quick. Temperature. sweltering. Yeah, 115 degrees. Very, very terrible heat, coupled with the fact that this venue had 3 times the amount of people inside it. Coupled with the heat, you're looking at a lot of people that could not just die from heat stroke, but collapse on the ground and die to a stampede, die to people walking on them, crushing them. There's other ways to get crushed in a crowd other than your sides. You could be on the ground with people standing on you and them not know it. More than 100 killed after stampede at religious event in northern India. A stampede among thousands of people at a religious gathering in northern India has killed at least 105 and less scores injured, officials said Tuesday, with many women and children among the dead. Attendees had rushed to leave the makeshift tent following an event with Hindu figure Bol Baba, local media reported. They cited authorities who said heat and suffocation inside could have been a factor. Video of the aftermath showed the structure appeared to have collapsed. Women wailed over the dead. Senior police officer Shalab Mathur in Uttar Pradesh state confirmed that 105 people had died, while 84 others were injured and admitted to hospitals. Deadly stampedes are relatively common around Indian religious festivals where large crowds gather in small areas with shoddy infrastructure and few safety measures. Police officer Rajesh Singh said there was likely overcrowding at the event in a village in Hathras district, about 350 kilometers southwest of the state capital, Lucknow. Initial reports suggested that more than 15,000 people had gathered for the event, which had permission to host about 5,000. See here on the image. Just what we were looking at with temperatures. Heat is a killer. I'll get better at changing these headlines, promise. People started falling one upon another. Those who were crushed died. People there pulled them out. Witness Shakuntala Devi told the Press and Trust of India news agency. Bodies were brought to hospitals and morgues by trucks and private vehicles. Government official Tadin Sarad said. India Prime Minister Narendra Modi, who I can't even get into him in this video or this Modi, Prime Minister Modi, that's a lot, offered condolences to the families of the dead and said the federal government was working with state authorities to ensure the injured received help. Uttar Pradesh's Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath called the stampede extremely sad and heart-wrenching in a post on social media platform X, formerly Twitter. He said authorities were investigating the cause. In 2013, pilgrims visited a temple for a popular Hindu festival in central Madhya Pradesh state, trampled over each other amid fears that a bridge would collapse. At least 115 people were crushed to death or died in the river. In 2011, more than 100 Hindu devotees died in a crush at a religious festival in the southern state of Kerala. Some more information on this terrible tragedy.
आए थे हम 8 लोग, एक वो एक नहीं। ये पता ही नहीं, सब संगत में इधर को लोग गए हैं, वो पता ना क्या हुआ क्या ना हुआ। हम 8 लोग, एक वो एक नहीं।
He's saying, how did it happen? Sorry, can't see the subtitles there. I don't know. There was a sudden commotion, which a sudden commotion is probably you're realizing that people around you are dead. I didn't even realize what happened. Local hospitals struggle to deal with the surge of casualties.
इन लोगों की
Yeah, there's Modi.
इस हादसे में जान गई है।
Let's not give him a platform. Very uneasy. Very terrible tragedy.
मैं सभी घायलों के
Speedy recovery to all the injured.
ठीक होने की कामना करता हूँ। पीड़ितों की हर तरह से मदद की जाएगी।
A full investigation into the cause has been ordered. Over 100 people killed. Latest in crowd crush and festivals. Need something interesting instead of sad and horrible. So this is interesting from NPR. Ants treat certain leg entries with life-saving amputations. Lab experiments show that some ants will treat the injured legs of comrades, and when it's necessary, will even perform medical amputations. When an ant injures its leg, it sometimes will turn into a buddy who will help out by gnawing the leg off, effectively performing a life-saving limb amputation. That's according to some new experiments described in the journal Current Biology, which show that ants are the only animal other than humans known to practice amputation as a medical treatment. Not only can they do this, but they are able to diagnose the wounds and, depending on location, adapt the treatment according to maximize the survival chances of the injured, says Eric Frank, who studies social wound care among ants at the University of Würzburg, Germany. I find that truly remarkable. Wound care after battle. In the past, his group has studied how termite hunting ants in the tropics substantially reduced the death rate among injured nestmates by treating their wounds with antibiotic secretions that come from a special gland. But that gland doesn't exist in a common species known as Florida carpenter ants, or Campotonus floridanus. This species nests in rotting wood and will fight rivals to defend its home. So Frank wanted to see how these ants would react when confronted with the kind of injuries that come with battle. His team quickly observed that these ants would cut off wounded legs, much like miniature Civil War era surgeons, and this really piqued my interest, he says. An injured ant will present his leg to a nestmate who will lick the wound and then move up to the leg to bite it at the shoulder joint for many minutes at a time until the leg is severed. You can see the other one is not moving, not really flinching and accepting it, says Frank. Almost all the injured ants that got an amputation from a buddy survived. Meanwhile, ants with leg injuries that were kept away from the nestmates so that they don't get this treatment frequently died. To see how amputations helped, the researchers experimentally infected open leg wounds on ants with pathogens. They found that the kind of amputation that ants did would stop the infection from spreading and becoming lethal. Frank even went further and surgically amputated the injured legs himself, essentially mimicking the ant's surgical approach to see how the amputee fared. That confirmed, he says, these amputations were saving the lives of the infected individuals. The research had convinced other ant experts who were not involved in these studies, like Daniel Kroner of the Rockefeller University. The experiments are very thorough, said Kroner. To me, it sounds plausible. Here you have an ant species that lives in a log in my backyard where I grew up in Florida, and they've been doing clinical amputations for millions of years, longer certainly than humans have ever done it. Says Clint Pennick, a social insect researcher with Auburn University who was not involved in this work. It's really cool to see something like this and to see really strong research that backs up that this is actually a medical treatment that ants have evolved to do to prevent infection. Armed with amputation instincts, interestingly, ants would only perform an amputation when an injury was high up on an ant's leg, close to the middle of his body. Wounds lower down on the leg didn't elicit this treatment, although ants would lick at the injuries. That observation prompted Frank's team to try performing amputation on ants with lower leg injuries that have been infected with bacteria. They found that the ants always died. Frank and his colleagues were puzzling over why amputation solely seemed to work for upper leg injuries until they closely studied the leg's anatomy. They saw that the muscles in the upper leg normally help move blood like liquid through an ant's body. It's those muscles that get damaged when an upper leg injury occurs. This means that bacteria or the pathogen of the upper leg injury would spread to the rest of the body more slowly than they would from a lower leg injury. The fact that ants only perform amputations in certain circumstances is really cool. They can tell where on the leg the injury has occurred, right? And depending on where exactly the leg has been injured, it makes sense to amputate it, or it does not make sense to amputate. Still, he's cautious that it's not like ant medics are evaluating the wound and consciously weighing the pros and cons of treatment options like a human doctor would. I don't think they would have some kind of crazy cognitive capacities, says Kroner. They have basically evolved over like thousands and thousands and probably millions of years to be kind of programmed to react to different kinds of injuries in a certain way. Even so, says Pennick, humans tend to think about their medicine as uniquely sophisticated, and yet this common backyard ant essentially does surgery. And even when an ant had a lower leg injury that could not be treated with amputation, he notes, its nestmates would still tend to the wound, apparently applying some kind of antimicrobial secretions that often prove to be life-saving. My own work shows that a lot of ants produce antimicrobials.
Antimicrobial.
Antimicrobials. Just another example of things that are in public health repertoire that ants have to work with. This is real fascinating. So we found another species that has been doing something longer than us. Like that, they don't need to have a surgery room. They perform amputations on each other when they know it's to save their life. But the lower limb, they'll also apply an ointment on it. Guardian News. not eating it, and boom, tore right off. In that box right here. Right here.
Ants often have to defend their nests against invaders, and in these fights, their legs can get injured. Scientists now say that some ants will treat these wounds using an old mainstay of battlefield medicine, amputation. NPR's Nell Greenfield-Boyce reports.
Clinical amputation is something that humans have done for at least 30,000 years. It turns out that ants may have been doing it even longer. That's according to a new scientific report in the journal Current Biology.
This is the first example of medical amputation in the animal kingdom that we are describing here.
Eric Frank studies ants at the University of Würzburg in Germany. In the past, he studied how certain ants in the tropics will treat their buddies' wounds by applying antibiotic secretions from a special gland. But he recently started studying Florida carpenter ants that don't have this gland, and he immediately observed something surprising. Ants with an injury on the upper part of a leg would present that leg to a nestmate who would gnaw it off at the shoulder. Frank says the injured one would endure the procedure stoically.
Not moving, not really flinching, and accepting it.
Once the leg was severed and fell off, the wounded ant would patiently wait for more medical care.
The other one will come back and lick the little stump that's left, and it will still be presenting it. So it's clearly collaborating and wants the same thing as the one that is treating it, of having this leg removed.
And here's why. Frank's lab experiments show that without amputation, infection from the open wound will spread and almost always be fatal. Interestingly, however, amputation is only life-saving when the injury is in the upper part of the leg, and the ants seem to know that, because when the wound is lower down, they won't amputate. Instead, they spend more time licking and tending the damaged area, presumably treating it with antibiotic compounds. Frank says it's really striking to him that not only can the ants perform amputations,
but they are even able to diagnose the wounds and, depending on the location, adapt the treatment accordingly to maximize the survival chances of the injured.
Researchers who study ants and who weren't involved in this study were equally impressed, like Clint Pennick of Auburn University.
This is an ant that I grew up with in my backyard. And so it's really interesting to see such a sophisticated behavior, that's literally happening in people's backyards from a common carpenter ant.
He says ants produce all kinds of antimicrobial compounds and have evolved to have a remarkable set of medical treatments, which includes therapeutic amputation. Nell Greenfield-Boyce, NPR News.
Fascinating. Funding agreement will kickstart project to keep invasive carp out of the Great Lakes. From Detroit Free Press. Carp and Lobo. Officials lauded a newly signed agreement between the state governments of Michigan and Illinois and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to unlock funding for a project aimed at preventing invasive species from entering the Great Lakes. The Brandon Road Lock and Dam near Joliet, Illinois, serves as a choke point for invasive species entering the Great Lakes. A funding agreement announced Monday provides $274 million in federal funds and $114 million in combined state funding from Michigan and Illinois to finance construction of the Brandon Road Interbasin project. The funding will commence the first phase of the $1.1 billion project aimed at keeping out invasive carp and other nuisance species from entering the Great Lakes by having the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers install a series of measures at the dam. Today's agreement will help us get shovels in the ground as soon as possible on the critical Brandon Road project, Governor Gretchen Whitmer said in a statement. The Great Lakes are the beating heart of Michigan's economy, and Brandon Road will help us protect local communities and key industries, including fishing and boating, that support tens of thousands of good-paying jobs. The federal government is providing 90% of the funding needed for the project, according to the state officials. Certain species of invasive carp, like the bighead, are known to reproduce rapidly and can weigh up to 90 pounds. The plankton they eat are a main food source for native species of fish and other wildlife in the Great Lakes. 4 species of invasive carp, previously called Asian carp, were introduced in North America during the 70s. The fish were placed in ponds to eat algae and also were considered a new dining option for a human consumption, according to the New York Invasive Species Information Clearinghouse. But the fish escaped the ponds quickly and have been found in river systems, including those of Mississippi and Illinois rivers. Bighead carp are found in the Illinois River, according to Clearinghouse, which is connected to the Great Lakes via the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal. If certain species of the carp were to enter the Great Lakes, they would be able to thrive in parts of Lake Michigan rich in plankton, a 2019 University of Michigan study found. Plankton is a primary food source for many native fish species in the Great Lakes, like walleye, yellow perch, and lake whitefish, the State Department of Natural DNR says. Invasive bighead carp can eat up to 40% of their own weight each day, and their presence would threaten native fish in Michigan's commercial fishing industry. Measures like constructing an engineered channel with an electric barrier, a flushing lock, underwater acoustic deterrents, air bubble curtain, and an automated barge clearing deterrent at Brandon Road are all part of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers' recommended strategies for keeping invasive species out of the Great Lakes. State officials encourage residents to report potential sightings of invasive carp in the Great Lakes to the DNR. Yeah. Bighead carp, huh? Let's take a look. Oh my. Yeah, that's a bighead carp for sure.
Is that what you're doing? And look up at your screen right now. A Perryville man has one whopper of a fish story to tell.
He does. Matt Newling set a new Missouri state record.
125-pound bighead carp. These are the fish that we're talking about here when it comes to the Great Lakes, the Mississippi River. These are the kind of fish that we're talking about here. Just massive. They're bighead carp.
When he shot his 125-pound, 5-ounce bighead carp. There it is. That is a big one. He was bow fishing last month at Lake Perry when he caught this one. He says his buddy had to help him pull this massive fish out of the water. I can imagine at 125 pounds. The Missouri Department of Conservation estimates that the fish about 10 years old. Bet he'll be hanging that one up on the wall.
Yes, he will. At least he has a picture to prove.
Yes, right.
Massive. Bighead carp. They're a nuisance. They're an invasive species and they're everywhere. 125 pound. Massive. So we were talking about South Pole and North Pole earlier. Record low May sea ice rings alarm bells for Canada's Hudson's Bay polar bears. Essentially, polar bears need fast sea ice to be able to hunt, eat seals from. They need to swim to these areas, jump and get these seals from fast ice, instead of the polar bears standing at the coastline waiting for sea ice to form, waiting for sea ice in the distance to form. Otherwise, they don't eat. They resort to cannibalism. And let's get into it. The extent of sea ice covering Canada's Hudson Bay hit a record low for May, intensifying concern on the fate of some 4,000 polar bears that live there, as new research adds to a growing scientific consensus that the region's bears are on track to disappear within decades. 3 of the world's remaining 19 polar bear populations live in and around Canada's vast Hudson Bay, which connects to the Arctic and Atlantic Oceans. The region is unique compared to the Arctic, as the bay thaws out entirely in summer, forcing bears to come ashore while they wait for the ice to return. The bears do not eat during this time, as they need sea ice to hunt seals, as we were talking about. While the bay normally remains covered in sea ice in May, this year the eastern portion of the Hudson Bay opened up, the Natural Snow and Ice Data Service said, as strong winds shifted ice westward. This led Hudson Bay to register its lowest extent of ice for May in the satellite record dating back to 1979, or 205,000 square kilometers, or 79,000 square miles, below average. It's a very unusual situation, said polar bear biologist Andrew Derisher of the University of Alberta. There are fewer bears in eastern Hudson Bay, but there is much less known about where they come from. Bears using the area, he added, probably moved out as the ice shifted this year, but if they got stuck on the offshore islands, they'll likely be in trouble as the ice disappeared from the area and hasn't come back. Dorker said the bears he observed during spring field work in western Hudson Bay appeared to be in good condition, but that will not continue as climate change upends the bear's habitat. Local extinction. A study published in the journal Nature Communications Earth and Environment on Thursday highlighted the peril facing the world's southernmost polar bear populations. If the world were to breach the UN Paris Agreement targeting limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial temperatures, the research suggests polar bears in the western Hudson Bay and southern Hudson Bay would be in serious trouble. Under current emissions policies, the world is on track to surpass 1.5 degrees Celsius of warming in the 2030s. The disappearance of the southern Hudson Bay polar bears is imminent, with western Hudson Bay not far behind. If we go over the 2 Celsius of warming, we can't really hope that those bears will stay there. The western Hudson polar bear population has already fallen by half since 1987. The research, which used warming projections from 20 climate models, determined western Hudson Bay would become an unsuitable habitat for polar bears at around 2.2 Celsius of warming. Southern Hudson Bay would no longer be able to support bears at between 1.6 degrees Celsius and 2.1 degrees Celsius of warming, as the lengthened open water period would force bears to fast beyond the point of survival, fast on land. Not that they run fast on land, but they don't eat. While previous studies have made similar projections, the new research factored in sea ice thickness for the first time. This is what we were talking about earlier, not knowing how thick the sea ice actually is from the surface. Even if sea ice is present, it may not be thick enough to support the weight of an adult bear. Past studies assessing future polar bear survival, Grove said, may have underestimated how long polar bears will be forced to go without hunting by about 50 days when only examining sea ice extent. Last year was the lowest. This year is right on track to be lowest again. Lowest daily sea ice extent. Antarctica seeing some huge swings. More news coming out of the United States when it comes to the Supreme Court and their deregulation, decorruptioning. U.S. Supreme Court to consider reinstating approval for oil railway in eastern Utah. The Supreme Court agreed on Monday to consider reviving a critical approval for a railroad project that would carry crude oil and boost fossil fuel production in rural eastern Utah. The justices will review an appeals court ruling that overturned the approval issued by the Surface Transportation Board for the Uinta Basin Railway, an 88-mile railway line. Arguments will take place in the fall. The rail line would connect oil and gas producers in rural Utah to the broader rail network, allowing them to access larger markets and ultimately sell to refineries near the Gulf of Mexico. Producers who are currently limited to tanker trucks would be able to ship an additional 350,000 barrels of crude oil daily on trains extending for about 2 miles. The railway is being pursued through a public-private partnership between infrastructure development and investment firm DHIP Group in Winter Park, Florida, and the 7-County Infrastructure Coalition, a body formed by Eastern Utah officials. Other proponents include oil businesses in the UT Indian tribe of the Uinta and Uri reservation. They have argued that the railroad would be a boon to struggling local economies and boost domestic energy production. The type of oil to be exported from Utah, waxy crude, which is semi-solid at room temperature, makes it more challenging to move. Currently, it's heated and shipped in insulated trucks. The oil's consistency, on the other hand, makes it less damaging and easier to clean up after spills, project proponents say. The Supreme Court decision to hear the case was cause for optimism for the stalled railroad developers. This project is vital for the economic growth and connectivity of the Uinta Basin region, and we are committed to seeing it through, Keith Heaton, director of the 7-County Infrastructure Coalition, said in a statement. Environmental groups in Colorado's Eagle County, which sued to challenge the project, nevertheless worry about safety and potential train derailments. From the railway in Utah, the oil trains would enter Colorado, following the Colorado River upstream and over the Rocky Mountains to Denver and beyond. Colorado U.S. Senator Michael Bennet and U.S. Representative Joe DeGoose, both Democrats, opposed the project, asserting that an oil spill in the Colorado River headwaters would be catastrophic. Environmental groups also contend that the rail line would allow more oil to be extracted and burned, contributing to climate change. Federal Appeals Court in Washington ruled last year that the Surface Transportation Board's environmental approval was rushed and violated federal law. The issue at the Supreme Court is whether the agency should have weighed the potential and environmental harm of the railroad's main cargo, both where the oil is drilled in Utah and refined in the Gulf Coast, when it has no regulatory authority over oil production. It's disappointing the Supreme Court took up this case, but the appellate court's decision on the destructive project is legally sound and should ultimately stand. Wendy Park, a senior attorney at the Center for Biological Diversity, said in a statement, "The railroad would still need additional review and government approvals to proceed, even if developers prevail before the Supreme Court," group noted. Just one after another. Let's see, not this article. I'm just currently, sorry, I'm looking for another article to read. Dockside friendship between woman and sunfish reaches 9 years. Greenie, the sunfish, waits by the dock for Holly Jurgensen, swims with her, and jumps out of the water for treats. What? (2024) update. This spring, just after ice out, Greenie the sunfish once again returned to Holly's dock. This marks the 9th summer Holly and Greenie will spend together. Holly is currently writing a book about their adventures. She titled it Greenie and the Girl, an Enchanted Fish's Memoir for All Generations. For more information, here's a link to Holly's blog. Adorable. Let's play the video to get more into the article.
Minnesotans by the carloads will be headed to the lake this week for the 4th of July.
4 years ago, we introduced you to a woman who's already there. Holly Jorgensen formed a special relationship with, of all things, a fish. Tonight we have an update, but first, Boyd Hubert shares the story of Holly and Greenie.
Most of our encounters with sunfish come at the end of a line.
Digging for worms for a treat for Greenie.
Holly Jorgensen has of another kind.
There he is. Hi, sweetie.
Holly wasn't looking for a pal when she first locked eyes with the green sunfish
Hey, Greenie.
just off her dock.
But he looked at me like I've never had a fish look at me.
From fish eyes
Can you jump?
came a friendship.
There you go. He sure does like a special fish. Saw that he just acts different from other fish. There you go.
Even before Holly began serving snacks, Greenie would be waiting at the dock.
Why he in particular recognizes me and looks at me the way he does and follows me around, I don't know. But it's wonderful.
Waiting too after ice out for 5 straight years.
I go, wow, he made it through another winter.
Greenie isn't alone in Holly's lake,
See, they're all getting friendly now.
but is the only fish we saw that appeared to relish a chin rub.
Yeah. Hi, sweetie.
Holly asked that we not divulge the location of her lake for obvious reasons.
Actually, last Friday night, he showed up and he had a hook in his mouth. And my heart just sank. And I just very, very carefully backed it out and put him back in the water and went, whoa. We were both relieved.
When Holly swims to the other side of the lake, Greenie's been known to tag along.
Yeah. People complain about no entertainment, no movies, no bars, no restaurants. I could care less. You know, I've got this better.
So enamored, Holly wrote Greenie home.
To have a friend who's not like me. Swim in the sky, fly in the sea.
She titled her poem Diversity.
It's entering someone else's world.
Sunfish remain a nice catch.
I'm petting them.
But in the most stressful of years, Greenie gives Holly Jorgensen
Boss, aren't you?
a release.
You're the boss.
Boyd Hubert, Channel 11 News, somewhere in Minnesota.
So
4 years after that story first aired this spring, just after ice out, Greenie once again returned to Holly's dock.
My boy, I'm so happy to see you. Yes, I am.
This now marks the 9th summer Holly and Greenie will spend together. Holly's currently writing a book about their adventures. She's titled it Greenie and the Girl, an enchanted fish memoir for all generations. To learn more, you'll find a link to Holly's blog at care11.com. That was just an amazing story.
Yeah, it's one of those I wouldn't believe it if I didn't
See it with your own eyes.
With my own eyes.
That's right.
9 years. Wow.
9-year friendship with sunfish. That's a pretty incredible story. All right. If you're new to the channel, and you probably heard me talk about this, YouTube has demonetized my channel going forward indefinitely. Appeal is not possible due to shocking content and circumventing systems. Not sure why, but it happened, and as a result, I created a Patreon, One Great Earth. The link is in the description of the video. I ask, at the very minimum, please, there is a free membership level. You can just create or an already existing Patreon account and clicking free membership join. That will keep me motivated to continue putting out daily climate related videos on YouTube. Otherwise, I might have to move to Twitch, and I don't like the back end of Twitch as much as what I can do on YouTube. But because it is an indefinite suspension, we'll have to wait and see. If the Patreon turns out well, I'll continue with the YouTube channel. If not, I'll switch over to Twitch, even though that I have some almost 6,500 subscribers. Even though I have some 6,500, almost 6,500 subscribers. There's not monetization on this channel. So if you see ads, it's not from me, that's YouTube. So even though they demonetize me, they can still show ads on my channel. Not fair. But I don't get the kind of views that monetization would be that beneficial anyway. As a result, I do have some headliners, which are the members that I refer to as in the $5 tier. I would like to thank Mashan. I would like to thank Ashley. I would like to thank John. And I would like to thank Sarah. Thank you so much. I do appreciate the support, and I do appreciate your commitment. I'm trying my hardest to put out daily climate-related content. It's not as easy. It's not easy. But we'll have to see what happens next. As this channel continues to grow, and I'm not sure where to take it next, because when I originally started this channel, it was just time lapses of wildfires throughout Canada. I never showed my face on this channel for a very long time. And just recently, I've been thinking a lot about the future of the channel, especially the YouTube channel, about there being any appeal possible for I don't know if that includes super chats and other membership perks, because if it does include super chats and all that other stuff, then I probably have to move to Twitch, unfortunately. I don't want to walk away from a channel that has 6,500 subscribers. But if there is no support or hope for the channel going forward as a result of odd banning on my account, there's nothing I can do. I have to move on and maybe try Twitch. Which, you know, like, there's gaming and stuff, but there's also chatting, just chatting. But the haven't really tried Twitch. I probably should be restreaming between YouTube and Twitch together, which that would be interesting. I would have to look into restreaming, being able to stream between both Twitch and YouTube at the same time would be interesting. I don't know why I have to feel it has to be one or the other. But again, you can please go in the description of the video. The Patreon link is there. At the very minimum, please click the free membership tier. That will help me keep me motivated and to commitment that I'm putting in here. Every day at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, I want to go live with as much climate news that I can fit into the period of time that I have available. It might sound vague, but again, like, we're going over a lot of different topics, a lot of different topics regarding climate change, regarding large events that happen to unfold. Like we were talking about the massive crowd crush in India, northern India. These are difficult topics to talk about, but they're ones that we have to. They are ultimately part of this planet. All right. Thank you very much for joining me. Thank you, Rory. Thank you for telling me to keep going. People like you are why I do this. This is the Patreon that I created. Continue the YouTube channel. Twitch would be something, I feel like I would have to do something different for Twitch. I don't think this would go over the same as, you know, it has on YouTube. All right. Thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I will be back again tomorrow with another stream. It takes a while to find appropriate news and follow up on previous news that we've had discussed before. Mostly, of course, climate change related topics. Another thing is we haven't looked at volcanoes in a while. It might be something to commit an entire stream to. Is well, it's a big topic. It's a lot to talk about. But again, I was told by YouTube, Google, that my channel is indefinitely suspended whenever it comes to refer to the Google Ads account, the AdSense. I created this Patreon, and that's that. Sorry if I'm rambling a little bit. I do not have a script, and I am literally just seat in my pants, or I think that's what it's called. I think that's the turn of phrase. Let's see. Sewage contamination of British waterways reveals infrastructure problems ahead of election. Yeah, that's a lot of sewage runoff inside the waters. Dirty rivers. Unsafe to swim. Let's see, probably one more. Indonesia's Tenggris pray for rain as climate change threatens crops. They're on an active volcano. Speaking of volcanoes, thousands of people trek to the top of Mount Bromo, which is an active volcano, and end their ritual by hurling offers into the volcano's crater. Whoa, that's quite a pilgrimage. Quite a trek. That. What are these nets? People using nets. That's crazy. I've never seen anything like this before. People are lined up in Marseille. People are walking up the hard ways too. All around the mountaintop. Waiting, sitting, praying for rain. Looks so dry. I don't know what kind of offerings they're throwing into the volcano. Today, the increasingly unpredictable weather has made seeking divine blessings even more vital for this Hindu farming community. The Tenggris live in scores of villages in the national park on Mount Bromo, one of several active volcanoes in Indonesia. The park, popular with tourists, is located near the East Java city of Probolinggo, some 800 kilometers south of the capital, Jakarta. The community has held the festival since the 13th century Mahajapahit Empire to express their devotion and gratitude to their ancestors and gods, carrying items that include vegetables, fruits, as well as goats and other livestock. Thousands of Tenggris trek to the top of the 2,329 meter or 7,641 foot Mount Bromo, ending their ritual by hurling offers into the crater. They throw goats in? Bad. During the festival this week, they throw goats into the volcano for rain. Toss them in screaming. We pray for bountiful land for the year ahead, for the plants to grow healthy, said Eshi, a 64-year-old farmer in the Greater Hetero Engadijero village near Mount Bromo, who many Indonesians goes by one name, Asi Farmers in Mount Bromo rely on rain and rain-fed lakes for irrigation, but the drier weather has forced Erwan Carioto, 56, to plant less lucrative spring onions instead of potatoes in his 2-hectare, 5-acre plot. Faithful play a traditional musical instrument. A Ketepung during a ritual ahead of Yadna Kasada festival. Money, bananas, and cigarettes. Why are they catching offerings? Gonna throw goats directly into the volcano. Here's what the nets are about. Old nets on the slopes of Mount Bromo as a catch offerings thrown by worshippers. Why are they catching offerings? That is bizarre. That is really bizarre. Why are they catching offerings being thrown into the volcano, the active volcano? And why are they standing in the volcano? Not good. It's not good for your lungs, I hear. Not like a straight plummet, you know, it's curved. So it's not like you just throw it and it goes directly in. There's people in front of you trying to catch it. What is this, a sport? What are they catching them to eat? They're catching them to like take the offerings for themselves? Or are they hoping to kind of do a layup and throw it into the volcano further, so it makes its way into Mount Bromo? Not sure. Strange questions. Pretty desperate situation. All right. I thank you once again for your time. Thank you for joining me. I will be back tomorrow at 5:30 p.m. Eastern with another stream. Trying to make this a daily thing. I did not have a Friday stream for reasons I won't get into right now, but I am going to end the stream now. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening and your interest in these topics. Please take care.